I'm Angela Kelly Robeck, host of the Empowered Principal Podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome back, folks, to another episode of the High Tech Podcast. This is William Illingworth, one of your two co-hosts, joined by Joshua
Wait,
Schwartz.
there's another. Oh wait, that's me.
He's there.
Yeah.
He's everywhere.
Yeah.
He's Josh.
Hello.
Schwartz.
See, I tried it again. Didn't work.
That's all right. That's all right. We'll get there. I mean, we'll come up with something that we don't steal from someone else, or that doesn't make us sound.
Or I'll steal it from someone else. There's nothing wrong with that.
I kind of liked.
What's copyright?
No big deal. It's fine. It's totally fine. Another episode, folks. We are back. We are thrilled to be digging into some fun content this week about user experience. We love this stuff. This is Josh and my bread and butter in many ways. Most times we're dealing with other people's, so we'll be giving you some insights into that, not necessarily how to make your own. But before we get into what it is to build the house, the learning house, we want to remind you, as always, you can follow us on Twitter at Hightech Podcast. You can email us at the inbox at hightechpod.us.
Us.
And you can get our website at hightechpod.us, where we have all of our resources from every episode, helping you take advantage of the apps we suggest or the concepts we talk about. We want to make sure that this stuff is useful for you folks. Now, before we continue, we cannot forget Josh's I was thinking of a word. I can't think of it. It's gone. Indelible? I don't know. The word is gone.
I really don't know what you're going.
And now I'm just
awesome. Great.
Yes, Josh is awesome.
Fabulous.
Photos and pictures. What do you got for us this week?
Yeah. So hey, I'm gonna change it up this week. Okay. I guess this could be considered an animal. I have no idea. That's not my expertise. But here's what I'm asking for. I'd like a picture of a spider on a man. Okay?
I don't like it.
It's like Spider-Man, but not, Trying something different. It's mainly because I have a Spider-Man bobblehead on a shelf over here, and I saw it, and I was like, I gotta figure out how to work this out. Sure. I can tell Will really doesn't like this one.
No, my first thought, like my first thought is literally in this room yesterday there was a spider walking on in the middle of a meeting. I'm in a meeting. I reached down. I'm like, huh? And I reached down. I grab it. I hit it with something. I put it. And my team is like, what just happened? I was like, that was a spider. And they're all like, you were really pretty calm. As I was like, yeah. I mean, it was on me, but I wasn't gonna piss it off.
It's just a spider.
But I started getting the EBGBs as soon as you said that. I was like, oh, that spider's back.
You want this is an aside, a rabbit hole, if you will, or a spider hole, maybe. Doesn't involve spiders, but I'll do you one better. I was in a Zoom meeting when a wasp got in my office somehow, and it was just flying around, and I had to pause the meeting so that I could grab a shoe because I had been having problems with wasps getting in the house.
Oh no!
So I already had a shoe in place, it was armed and ready. And all they hear through Zoom is a slam on the desk because I killed it right on my mouse pad. And I scooped it up and threw it in the trash can. And they see me take a shoe and put it down. And they're like, what was that? I was like, nothing. It's a wasp problem. Just continue where we were at.
Everything's fine. Everything's fine.
So online course design.
Well, but, so I went from my horrifying experience yesterday. Then, of course, immediately the next thought was someone's going to give us a screenshot of Shelob bundling up Frodo. Not Frodo.
Yeah.
Yeah, Frodo.
Yeah, I can't believe you just questioned yourself on that. It's a good thing we have a Lord of the Rings day coming up.
We literally have it
need a
planned
refresher
to watch the trilogy in 2 weeks. We're prepping for the new series in the fall.
Is that really in 2 weeks? Wow, it's crazy.
It's like
Time
2
flies
Sundays.
by.
I don't even know.
Yeah, whatever.
Can't wait.
Are
we doing a podcast? I forgot.
Yeah, we're on a podcast now. Anyway, so spider on a man. Okay, preferably not super creepy, but to each his own. As long as it's not gruesome. I guess. I don't know how big gruesome, but well, now I regret that. Anyway, that's what you can send to us. What are we talking about again? Something about houses?
Experience. So
do you want to try the intro you were going with last episode?
No.
Okay.
There's no singing.
I just wanted to make sure.
Everybody heard it last time. It's totally fine.
Yeah. If you didn't, go listen to last episode. Shame on you.
When a guest comes over your house and they ask you for the restroom, you give them instructions, especially if it's their first time, right?
Oh, is that what you're supposed to do?
Well, outside is not usually the
I
response.
say find it yourself.
Find it. And if you can find it, there's a prize. No,
I actually describe to them what the bathroom looks like, and then I walk away.
These are all great examples of what not to do, and we can extend the metaphor. But you tell them up the stairs on the right, make sure it's the second door on the left. Right? You give them some instructions. And when they start to go up those stairs and they see that there is no way to go right, they can only go straight. And if they go straight, there's only one door. They're a little confused.
Yeah.
This is not only confusing, sure, but it's bad user experience.
Yeah.
We have told them one thing. They have expected that thing, and now they are seeing something completely different, and all they wanted to do was go to the bathroom. Why did we mislead them?
Exactly.
Potty
and some of you
humor
listening
aside.
right now are like, why are we talking about user experience? I'm not I don't design websites. I don't do that type of stuff. And my statement would be, if you're an instructor who teaches in an online or hybrid format or uses an LMS at all, which is most of you. If there's one of you out there who doesn't, I want to know.
Also,
what you're doing.
Email us at inbox
Like,
at
yes,
hightechpod.us.
if you email us and please tell us, because
why don't you use? How do you not use an LMS?
What have you not been using? Anyway, you do have to be in the game of user experience a little bit, because your site is you have control to a certain extent, whether it's you're giving content to people who build the course for you or you make the course yourself. You have control over how something you're learning, your course's site on the LMS, is organized and designed. And I'm gonna be honest with some of you guys, okay? In my experience, some of you are like sticking a chair in front of the bathroom door when you try to get them to the bathroom, and you've built a wall over the steps that get to the bathroom.
Yeah.
But you put a sign on the wall that says "bathroom here."
Your
no
students
context.
pretty much have to play Jumanji to get to your learning content. It's like I just so Josh and I have some feelings on this issue. I think that's where the metaphors and the frustrations coming out. But at the end of the day, right? I've been a part of building courses that are great, and I've been a part of building courses that are not great. I've used and taken courses as students that are good and bad. I've literally used a website before that a faculty member made themselves that was pretty much just white and black text and links. And while it was not beautiful by any means, it had instructional content and it was linear. Lesson 1 to lesson 10. And you know what? It worked. Like, again, it wasn't beautiful. Yeah. It's not what I would sell today as a sexy online course, right? But he didn't let anything get in the way of getting his students from lesson 1 to lesson 10.
Sorry, that's going to be my new system for winning people over to the course that I'm like, guys, we should use this layout. It's a sexy online course.
It's a sexy course.
It's got it going on.
Look at them games.
Yeah, like, so let's get that right out of the way. The stuff that Will and I, and we've talked about this stuff before. This is not a new topic for the High Tech Podcast. We've talked about this in different forms and fashions because Will and I have a soapbox. And, well, a couple soapboxes, and one of them starts with a U and ends with X. That's the abbreviation for user experience, in case anybody was curious. Anyway, somebody's like, I don't know what that means. The point is, though, that what we're going to be talking about today is not us saying all of you instructors working in some kind of online course or creating a site or whatever you're doing needs to create this fancy website that makes a ton of sense. And let me get that right out of the gate, because I feel like sometimes instructors think that's what they're supposed to do, and that's why their course gets way off the rails, because they try to create a unique fancy course site, and they end up creating something that their student has no idea how to navigate, or doesn't make any sense.
And the other side of that is just the junk drawer, and you didn't even try. It just ends up being a junk drawer of content.
Exactly. So our point is that whatever you're doing, When you're, and then the analogy that Will and I are talking about is that I like to use when talking about this is whenever you're making your course site or you're putting together your content or you're thinking through how your activities function, like the instructions for your activity and what you're going to have your students doing, you are in essence creating an environment for your students that plays a part in facilitating learning. If it's online, it's a huge part. If it's hybrid, it's a decent part as well. If you're just teaching a face-to-face course and you're using the Canvas site, it still plays a factor when your students leave that classroom and they need to go find something. So whatever you're doing, we want to talk a little bit about how you can kind of build that environment or house, as we'll use a reference, that will help. And so I think there's a couple different things I get into, but first thing I want to jump into right away, let's just get to it, is whatever you're doing should make like sense to a normal person. Okay,
He says with
So,
a
like,
question mark.
yeah, because some people will say this and be like, well, what I built makes sense. When you're creating a site for your students, there's a key word in there. It's for your students. I think where a lot of instructors go wrong is they do whatever is for good reason, because some of you, I know a bunch of you are not techie. It's fine. But you do what Will's talking about, like a resource dump, where like you have a folder of all your PowerPoints, you have your assignments, you have this, and it's easy for you to get there. Because you're used to thinking of stuff in your course that way.
It's your stuff.
You're
know
used
where
to
it
thinking
is.
of it. Oh, well, here are all my PowerPoints for the course. Here are all my files for the course. Here are the assignments. The problem is for most students nowadays, they're used to going to a site and everything that you need for that specific task you're doing or your thing there is somehow accessible from that area. Like that's good user experience. Like most people designing websites or apps, they know not to make something, ask somebody to do something and say in it, well, go to that other page and find that thing.
Right.
And that's the point. And when we use the house example, it's because when you're not using those common features of easily accessible things and all the information they need in one place for a certain activity or task, you're designing a house but not using normal house conventions. It would be the same thing as, like, Will, to your point, coming in, somebody asking where the bathroom is. You explain it to them, but you decided to put the bathroom, like, behind the kitchen, behind, like, a closet, behind, like, another thing, and it just doesn't make sense.
And
Like,
I've
people
been
get
in those
confused.
houses where it's like the only bathroom on the first floor is through someone's bedroom. Right, so
Yeah.
the thought was, oh, I want this bathroom to be accessible to my bedroom. That's so convenient. But the first floor is where everyone lives and comes to when you're
Yeah.
entertaining, right? And so now everybody has to go through your bedroom to get to your bathroom. Like, it's not fun for anybody. And then you have to clean your bedroom every time you have guests over.
Yeah, exactly. So the best things I recommend to people are this. When you're going to start putting your course site together, or whatever you're going to be doing, or you're thinking of how you're organizing your content, however that's going to be, and there's a couple different components to this user experience thing that I think we could get into, but I think one of the easiest things to talk about right now is just to think about, okay, how are your students going to progress through your course? Okay, what's the start and the finish? Is this a normal course where they just like go week to week? If it is, then organize your site that way. This seems super simple, but it's a huge piece. However you do that, every learning management system has some way that you create things. We're used to working in Canvas. Canvas has things called modules that are super helpful for creating week-to-week content. A lot of other LMSs have other things. I mean, Schoology that I've worked in before had basically the same thing. It was like folders, and they organize it week to week. Why? Because that's the order they're going to go in.
Yeah.
I think the thing that I often reference to people is like, think of each part of your site or whatever you're making. You're essentially building that house structure, and that structure needs to make sense, because if it doesn't, students can start to click into things and get lost and not realize where things are. And you could be like, well, read the syllabus and but like, how many times have you gotten confused by going to a site? Okay? Like that's what we're talking about.
And the trouble is, in many ways, as we're talking about this user experience thing, we talk about the metaphor of this house. The syllabus should be the blueprint for the house, for the course. And so if you know true architecture, a blueprint, yes, you might lose some inches or some feet here and there from blueprint to reality, but the blueprint becomes the house. The house is the blueprint. what does happen pretty frequently, and this is a very easy thing to address with user experience, right? The visual user experience of your course site should match the instructions in your syllabus, should match the layout of your syllabus. It doesn't have to be like literally, week 1 is page 1. That's not the point. No, it's like your first page might have your contact information, your course description, stuff like that. Their second page might start to introduce your students to how you expect them to learn this semester. Therefore, that meaning going on your course site a couple times a week, coming to 2 of your classes, and then the third one's hybrid. Like, those expectations need to start being set, and then in them, the language needs to be consistent to what you do online. If, like Josh said, you do a week by week course and you call everything week 1, then do not write everything in your syllabus about lesson 1 and lesson 2, right?
Oh, yeah.
If it's weeks in the Canvas, in the LMS, and you're saying lessons in the syllabus, you're already mismatching things. And that it's simple. I mean, this is not rocket science. We're not trying to like advocate for something that's so hard to do. It's just consistency. That clarity is really important, because you will have students asking, okay, but is lesson 1 and lesson 2 in week 1, or is lesson 1, does it go into week 2? Like, it's not clear here to me because something's got a weird due date, right? Like, suddenly you have to answer that question for 45 students. If you had just checked your language and made everything week 1, it would be all clear. But there's an opportunity. Like, we're not saying you have to do week by week. There's reasons to do lesson, and everything's lesson. And you make a certain, flow for each lesson. That's totally fine. Just stay consistent with that language. You wouldn't give somebody instructions to get to your bathroom that aren't accurate, right?
Yeah.
You tell them how to get there, and you hope that they get there, and you really, we're thinking about building the house and then how people use the house once they're in it. You don't build the front door to go into your bedroom. The front door comes into an entry hall, and then the entry hall breaks off into a living room, and then to the dining room, and all these, like in the same way, your syllabus and your course experience need to welcome the students in somehow. Introduce them to what they should expect. That could be a video, that can be a paragraph of text, there can be tons of reasons, tons of ways to do that. But like, this is one of those things, like, consistency is key, but also what is the first thing those students see, and how are you using that first moment with them to introduce them to your entire house or your entire course.
Yeah, I think the biggest part of it is consistency. Like, there's a lot of other parts we're talking about, but I think at the end of the day, if you decide to call something lessons, that's great. But like your point, make sure the syllabus lines up with that. Make sure you're consistently using that. And then the other thing I would add in is don't overcomplicate things. Okay. So I've seen people, I use this as an example. We've had this person on the podcast. I'm not going to tell you who. You can play a guessing game. You can figure out who was on the podcast and what I'm going to be talking about. But they made a course that had lesson, and then it was like lesson 1.1. It was like, or unit. It was lesson, then unit, and then within the unit you had several activities. Then the next unit you had several activities. Next unit you had several activities. Next unit you had several activities. Then you were done with lesson 1, and you went to lesson 2. And you had more units with more activities. So you were 3 levels in by the time we got clicking in. People got confused of where to go. Okay? To say the least. So my encouragement to people is this. Pick the main way you're going to organize the course and stick to it. And don't embed multiple levels of things in it. Pick I think this may be oversimplifying it, but I'm going to go with it. Okay. I think when you're doing a user experience for any kind of learning experience or course, you pick your overall organization. Within those big buckets should be your activities / lesson, whatever you call them. Okay. The thing the person goes to get the resources and do the thing or learn the thing, being really simple. And those things should just be embedded inside the bigger structure. There should never be another third structure in the structure.
Yeah, you're saying keep it to 2 layers. The top layer and the second layer. That's it.
Exactly. And think of each activity or, page of content, whatever it may be, as like the home they come to do that thing, and they shouldn't have to pull open multiple different tabs and windows to do that thing.
to make sense of it. It should all
so
be
like to make sense of it,
Yep.
right? So like if I'm having them come to an assignment, and in that assignment they need to watch this video, read this resource, to prepare for the activity. I'm not going to create one page that just has the video on it. It's like, watch this video. And then create a page that has the link. And you guys laugh at this, but I've seen this. People create a page and it's one bullet.
How many
and it's
times
just a link to
I've
another
seen that.
website. So like, no, put that all in the assignment. So the student can just go to that assignment. They can stay on the assignment. They can watch the video. They can read the activity and organize the instructions in the order of what they need to do. Okay. Yeah. Think of it logically. Like if the student needs to watch this video or read this resource and go to this website before they do the assignment, make sure all three of those things and the instructions related to those things are at the top of the assignment. And you don't start explaining what they're going to do after it, before it. Just explain that, right? And use conventions. If you're giving students steps, you're giving students steps. There is every tool has a numeric number system.
1, 2, 3
that you can use. Okay, use them. If you're using steps, don't paragraph them together. Okay, if you're given like 5 steps to do this thing, I don't want a giant paragraph of text. What you should do is break it out as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and the steps are ordered, so it's clear what's there.
When I was in high school, I was a part of a cyber charter school, and so it was homeschooling, but it was public schooling, but it was home, but it was a whole thing. What you just talked about, and especially like the units and layers, was my entire high school career. Every course, everything was like units, lessons, and modules, and it was all this like this multi-tier layering, and it was this weird, stupid outline, right? Like it was like 1A B, 1A C, 1A, it was all these letters, and it was this Roman numerals and crap. And at the end of the day, it was just to start at the top and go to the bottom. But they had a whole indenting structure. Everything was indented in if it was layer 1, layer 2, or layer 3. And whether it was a unit, a lesson, or a module. And it was all over the place. And it looked weird. But I just clicked at the top one, read through it, and hit next. Clicked next. And you just go through it linearly. If you just go through something linearly, there is no reason to create a hierarchy. Use it, make it linear. Just build it so the students can hit next to go from content to content. And Josh's point there is like, I've seen courses that like one unit, 1 week might have 25 little pages and activities and things in it, right? And you could have reduced those 25 to 10. You could have reduced those 25 to 5 even. Some of them was like, the video's on this page, and then the instructions are on this page, and then on this page. It's like, it's too much. You don't need to do that. People get scared of the wall of death, and if I put all this content on one page. You don't want to make it harder for students to get to your content. Yeah. Do not make them hunt and peck. If they are looking for their content, they're not learning your content. Yeah. Make it simple.
It'll make it more frustrating. Like at that point, if like, let's just use the house example again, right? Will's talking about getting to the bathroom. If the quickest way to the bathroom is right up the steps to the left, you tell them right up the steps to the left, okay? You don't tell them, well, if you round the kitchen first, and then you come in there, well, you might want to grab, some fruit because you might be hungry, and then you want to grab that, and then you make a like little L turn, come over here, you go up the steps.
Did I tell you about what happened to my mom last week? Nice then.
And then people start to move around and they get confused. So like it's the same thing in the site. You're building an organization that they're gonna walk through. Now, a good example of not a weak thing. We've built a lot of like internship sites before, like a course site for an internship, and they may need different resources from the internship at different times depending on what they need. What we decided to do was just create a simple page at the beginning that links to literally all the major resources they need. And with a little description of what each one is. So when it comes to the point that they need it, they can just click in, find that resource, and they're there. Right? That was a reason we didn't go week to week. We made the homepage a little bit easier. Like in our instance, I use Canvas, so there's a way to create like a page that they land on, and our office does that. So that makes it easy. But the point again is just like consistency and simplicity should be your target. and thinking through how are the students going to, like, what are they going to be doing when they come here? If they're going to be doing this assignment where they need to do all these things, I put it together. Okay, I put it in one place for them. I never, and I'm going to say this, okay, I never mention something that I could link to and don't link to it. If you're listening to this episode and you're a teacher who's going to make a course site this year, I want you to repeat it after me. I will never mention something that I could link to and not link to it. Always do that. Anything they mean, even if it's like a resource thing that they're going to use
because that
throughout
keeps
the course.
you honest too. Like like seriously, sometimes you misplace documents. You name them the wrong thing, or this. I've seen docs in courses that was literally like starting document parentheses 1 parentheses 2 parentheses 3. You know, like they had made copies of the document every time they've taught it, and so now it's named document starting document 15, right? But the file that they meant to upload was actually document 6. I don't know. Like I've had that happen. It's like, oh, of course the students can't do the assignment. They don't have the instructions. They don't have the actual document that they need. So if you're doing that effort to link everything as you build it, you're keeping yourself honest to make sure that the real thing they need is there for them.
And at the end of the at the end of the day, all of this that you're doing, you are guiding them just as much as you're guiding them to learn. You're guiding them to learn here by making sure you put things in the order and guide them through the way they should be getting to things. This is part of your teaching. Like at the end of the day, you're teaching them how to interact with some of these resources. You're teaching them how to learn the things that you want them to learn. This is what I love about online components, the way user experience comes together. You are literally building a digital environment that can visualize the path of learning that they need to go down. So build it in the way they're going to interact and learn, and try not to make it a mind map of things. Make it a clear path.
Josh, you're hearing him say a lot of things here about like clarity, consistency, make it easy. I have to make sure we swing the pendulum here and make a note for not too easy. And sometimes we get stuck in that too, where it's like, oh, I'll just get rid of everything. Or this is something I've been wrestling with recently in user experience. It's driving me nuts. I have a vendor. I have a learning content that has next buttons in it, and that makes sense. Even platforms have next buttons. If you're on this page and want to go to the next one, that's fine. This vendor decided to make the next buttons default to a position that makes them very small and just the shape of a caret, a caret. But that's like an arrow without a tail, right? So it's just the little pointy part. You can barely see it. You can barely tell that it's there. If you hover your mouse over the caret, it expands and it says the word next in big text. And on the other side of the screen is a previous. It's the same arrow. It's really still, it's small. It's hard to see. It's on the edge of the screen. But if you hover over that one, it says previous. We have now made this too simple and actually made things harder. I just did pilot testing on this last week, and every person, I had 6 people test this. Every person said, how do I get to the next slide? 6 out of 6 of my pilot testers. I know it's not some super awesome research study here, right? But like, they made the thing too small. They made it too out of the way. They made it too unnoticeable. The students are not clicking on the next button. They can't continue through the learning.
Well,
it's not something that's going to happen to everybody, but like a similar thing might be like if you put all of your images at the bottom of the page and you don't put them in context of the text. That's the thing where it's like, oh, I just want them to read. I don't want them to get distracted by the images. Yeah, but they might not actually look at the images if the images are relevant. If you put things into footnotes, that might get lost. If you like, there's a couple things where it's like, oh, I'm trying to put this in footnotes because it's not relevant here. But if it's still worth knowing, a footnote is more likely to be skipped than not. If you put anything with the word optional on it, just imagine it's not even there. Just delete it. Don't put anything that's optional in the system.
Yeah, and now I would argue your description there, and most instructors here, right, if you're listening and you're just like a teacher building a course, you're not gonna be in an opportunity to do something like that, probably. Like where you're creating a little next button that pops up.
Right.
But here's the principle I think out of there. I would argue they didn't go too simple. They got too fancy. Like simple would have just been putting frickin' next there, and that would have been simple. But they were like, ooh, I think it'd be cool to have the button like shrink. And it pops out.
Yep.
It'd be next. Yep. That's not simple. That's
fancy.
More fancy and complicated.
That's a good point.
Simple is just make. I think a book that if you're ever interested in user experience, Don't Make Me Think. It's a great book. I forget if I mentioned it before in this.
I think so.
Podcast.
Yeah. But hey,
but they talk about this concept of like road signs, like stop. Okay, clear means stop. Right, like build these road signs into your course. Things that are clear to them. If you or they're working on an activity and it connects back to a topic from an assignment in week 1 and you're in week 2, don't just like mention it. Link back to that assignment and mention it. Like give them clear pathways to things that you want them to get to. At the end of the day, you have a special tool in hand in the LMS that you may not like or do. I don't know your opinion. But it gives you the ability to actually physically guide people to resources and things and make connections, hyperlink things, bring stuff together all in one place for the student so that they can just focus on actually learning and not having to focus on figuring out where everything is first.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what I mean by simple is like just
no, I actually like that.
Make it obvious.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
If
you are building small buttons that expand into next, don't do that. That's stupid. No, it's dumb.
It feels like it's it's taking simple too far by trying. Like I think where I mean by that is that they wanted it to be as minimal as possible.
Yes.
They wanted minimalism, and so they were trying to be fancy to keep it minimal. And I think that trying to be too minimal is not the goal either. We don't need to make we don't need to make a big house. We don't need to make a small house. We need to make the right house. Yeah. We need to make a house that helps students learn.
Like in instructions for an assignment or things like that, listen, you're not writing your dissertation or textbook, okay? So it shouldn't be like 12 pages long.
You should not be.
You should be simple there. Like you should be paring down in that way. But everything that they need for that activity should be located there, and it should be obvious. It should be able to be picked up. If there's a resource that might be helpful, don't link it down at the bottom somewhere lost. Like make sure it's there. Make sure the information that they really need to know is super obvious and is broken out so it's easy to see. A lot of people scan web pages. So I know you think they're reading every part of your instructions, but they are not. Okay? So if there's a list of resources that they need or steps that they need to do, break them out in numbers or bullets, right? So people can see them quickly. Actually use headers, right? Like if there's an introduction to the assignment, use a header that says introduction.
That is significant.
Or if there's different topics in your instruction, like maybe you're there's an assignment on philosophy or whatever it may be, and you're talking about 3 different topics that they need to look at and break out. Don't just write a giant paragraph that talks about all those 3 topics. Break those 3 topics out into 3 different paragraphs.
One header that says Socrates, the next that says Aristotle, and the third that says Plato. Well, actually, it's Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, I think. But anyways.
And like, I don't know what assignment we're building. We're not philosophy instructors, but if we were, and let's say they needed to connect those 2 together, I might create a paragraph that says, like you said, Socrates, paragraph that says Aristotle or whatever, that's giving a little bit of description, the resources they need on them. And then if they're, for the assignment, going to be like connecting the 2 together or comparing these 2 ideas, I might have another paragraph with a header that says comparing whatever ideas they're comparing, and instructions in there, or instructions on what to do. If I give instructions in my assignment on how to format the paper, okay, I'm not going to bury that in the other paragraphs and text on
I'm going to put a header that says formatting.
I'm going to put a header formatting. Right? What we do all the time is if we have video assignments that students need to submit, we always have a section at the bottom that says recording the video. And there's instructions on how to do that and links to the resources that explain how to record their video.
Yep.
Never assume that your students know, we've said this before, never assume that your students know how to use technology better than you do. Some do.
Check, and check, baby.
Most people don't. Okay, so they need to be explained those things. So anyway, I think there's a lot of areas we could go with this, but at its key, I think what we're looking at here, Will, is consistency, simplicity. I feel like we had a third one. Now I'm losing it.
Clarity.
Clarity. Yeah, that was a thing. Clarity.
I just looked at our notes and I saw a word. And I was like,
that was nice.
looks
I
like a
wasn't.
word."
I have another monitor over there, but who cares?
We're animated. We care about this. Josh and I have just spent years now looking at these kinds of things. We've seen so many examples of people that mean well and that have just failed the mission. So we hope you can take some of these and improve your practice, improve your process. I think my number one, because everyone has to do this, my number one is to make sure your language in your syllabus and your course site is consistent. Start there. If you can do that, you're already making a big win. If you're saying weeks, use weeks. If you're saying lessons, use lessons. If you have one title for the project, make sure the project is named that in the LMS and in the syllabus. Like, these are just some, it's like the number one thing. And then once you have that kind of language clarity, consistency, you can have fun building in the LMS, but keep it clear, keep it organized, keep it linear. There's no reason to make the students hunt. And I think we don't say this enough. We've said it once or twice before. Ask for help. Go find your instructional design team, your instructional technology team. If you don't have one at your institution, get on Twitter. Ask us. We care so much. We would gladly just help people with this, give you some insights, right?
100%.
You're not alone, and if you are struggling with this practice of improving your students' experience in the virtual process, the virtual classroom, there are resources available to learn these things. And some of it's once and done, right? If you write your syllabus that you reuse every year, just make sure it's written well. And then if you write your course page that's used the same every year, it's done. Get it done once. Then you just need to do your minor tweaks year to year. Like, to me, it does feel like a lot trying to fix an entire course, trying to build an entire course and build it excellently. When people build houses, they really try and get it done right the first time, because somebody's going to live in it and we don't want water leaking in, right? Like, there's a whole, that's where the metaphor goes in a different direction. It doesn't work anymore. But with a course, with our house in the digital world, you can work on it every day. You can change a little bit to now, a little bit tomorrow. You can get peers to help you. You don't have to build it perfectly the first time. And in fact, you're never going to get it right. It's just going to keep improving as you refine, tweak, and twist at it a little bit. I love this. I think it's really important in teaching and learning. But it's one of those things that, I don't know, you can take for granted. It's just the color of the walls. It's the shape of the seat, right? But it does matter when it comes to the student's actual experience learning your course content. So don't put another barrier in their way. Reduce the barriers.
Yeah, for sure. Now, we talk about being clear, and sometimes to see things clearly, you just need a nice, lens. Some of us don't see as well as others. Although, ironically, lens. Will and I are two people who don't have glasses. So, but, I wore fake glasses once.
Band pick.
Like my wife needs glasses. Sometimes she needs a lens to help her focus. Get a little clearer. And sometimes you just need a digital lens to help you. And I'm using this analogy trying to get to the transition, and I'm struggling to get there to close the
Microsoft Office lens.
Yeah, maybe I don't know. People come here for the transitions, Will. Okay, so we can't disappoint them.
Is that why we don't have listeners? No, I'm joking.
Anyway, so the app today we want to talk about, you may have heard about this already. There's a lot of other apps comparable to this one. But this is one that I've used a lot that I thought would be worth mentioning. It's called Microsoft Office Lens. It is, we have it accessible at our institution through Microsoft accounts, but I do know you can download the app for free. And if you have a Microsoft email, you can easily use it. But basically what Office Lens is it's like a little pocket scanner. If any of you guys have ever used these types of things, basically Office Lens allows you to scan PDFs quickly and put them scan documents into PDFs. Let me scan this PDF on my computer so I can
turn it into a
PDF. But,
real pictures, real pieces of paper, real things in the world. You can use it to scan.
So let's say you need to use a couple pages from a book you want to scan. Hopefully under 10%, because over that's copyright infringement. And so You want to scan some pages, digitize some things. Be like, I don't have a scanner. If you have a cell phone, Office Lens can do that.
Boom.
And so it's super helpful. Other thing I use Office Lens for all the time is the amount of times you want to capture something off a whiteboard and keep it with you. Office Lens has a specific feature for scanning whiteboards and turning them into images or things that you can use.
That's awesome.
PDF files, and they have different like enhanced modes that'll make it easier to read when you put it digitally. So if you have something that you drew up on a whiteboard that you want to share with your students, Office Lens is great. The other thing I really like about Office Lens is this is a great tool if you have an activity you need your students to, like, you want them to handwrite something or draw something, but you want them to submit it to you in your learning management system so you can grade it and provide comments on it. Office Lens is a great tool for that. We use this for students. We want them to create a mind map. Now, there's digital tools for that. One named Coggle. You can go check out that episode. Early run. But let's say you want them to just draw it out. Like, we ask students to pick because sometimes students don't want to use technology. It can be confusing, and it's just easier for them to handwrite it. In that case, we'll provide them Office Lens that they can scan it. It's super easy. They just download it on their phone, literally click in, and immediately takes you to the area you need to scan things. And even, like, it has a little smart box that if I put it over something, it'll box out the piece of paper.
So you can it shows you that it's getting the region.
Yeah,
like
it'll help kind of pick out. It's not like you all know you've gotten those weird images from your students where you're like, take a picture, and they like take a picture from super far away, and you can see their
can't
desk.
read anything anyway.
You can't read it. Office Lens specifically picks out like boxes and shapes so that it can find paper and documents and things that you're looking at. So it's super cool. So it's great, and then it's super easy for them to just like save it as a photo on their phone or a PDF, and then even Office Lens has direct integration with some LMSs. Like Office Lens has integration with Canvas. I can auto send something over to Canvas from Office Lens. Which is pretty cool. That's
wild.
Although Canvas has added their own scanning feature now too. So
sure.
But Office Lens is a little bit easier to use and more accessible in my opinion. So it's a great tool. It's free, like I said. So you can download it off of your phone, start using it, mess around with it.
That's our aesthetic around these parts. Free. We love that.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're checking out something like that, this is a good tool to use. There's also a bunch of alternatives. But I've found Microsoft Office Lens to be a little bit more reliable and easier to use, but that's maybe just my preference for how it works.
Google Drive has a feature for this too. So like if you're a Google institution, I don't know if it has a name or something, but I know like Google Drive, I can scan something into Google Drive directly. So like there's definitely competitors. I am all about Microsoft because it's been around for a while, and it's a designated product that does, you know what I mean? When you want something to do something, you want to do it well. It works every time.
Yeah. Well, I know what I really like about it is it has like a little slider at the bottom where you can select what you're scanning. So like I can say I'm scanning a document, and it'll scan the document. I can say a whiteboard, business card, photo, things like that, and it changes kind of the way it scans it to pick it up and enhance it a little bit for digital. So anyway, it's a super easy tool. Your students don't need a scanner, they don't need anything fancy, they just need a cell phone, and they can use it. So it is mobile only, I think, if I remember correctly. I don't think they have I think they used to have like a website version that you could use with like a webcam, but they got rid of that because
why?
It's 2022. So
yeah. Why was anyone doing that?
If for some reason you're one of the few that doesn't have a smartphone, I'm sorry.
Right.
You can't use it.
Go buy a scanner, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, folks, that is another episode of the High Tech Podcast. Appreciate you hanging out with us as we talk about cool tools like Office Lens, and we get kind of soapboxy about user experience. Remember, link to things. Anyway, next episode, we're going to be talking about actually something that closely relates to some of this. We're going to be talking about accessibility. How can you make your courses more accessible? We'll specifically kind of focus in on the digital space, I think, a little bit, mostly, just because some of the dynamics. But who knows? We'll see.
I've got ideas for face-to-face.
We don't plan that far ahead to be that specific. So we're going to be talking about accessibility next episode and talking about Equate.io.
Equatio, I think.
And this is a Will special we're talking about next month, and I didn't check how to say it before we talked about it. So Equatio.
I don't remember actually either.
Okay. We know what the tool is, okay? That's the important part. We'll be talking about that next episode, and how it connects to accessibility. Anyway, if we didn't scare you away after that wonderful exit, make sure to check us out online at Twitter at High-Tech Podcast, or email us at inbox@hightechpod.us, or go to our website, hightechpod.us. Any of those places you can connect with us, check out our resources. Thank you again for joining us for another week as we continue to learn what it looks like to harness technology in the classroom, whether virtual or physical or wherever you are, for those of you apparently not using the LMS. Thank you again. I love hanging out with you guys. See ya.
.us. See ya.
No!